Ladies and gentlemen, we start with the opening session for the INFOCOM 2023 conference, and this is Transformational Leadership from Leapfrogging to Pole Vaulting. We are very privileged to have amongst us today our opening keynote speaker, Dr. R.A. Mashelkar, FRS, former Director General for Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR, and former Chairman, National Innovation Foundation. Before I request Dr. Mashelkar to present the keynote, I take this privilege to introduce him. Dr. Raghunath Anand Mashelkar is known for his own world-class scientific research in polymer science and engineering. The President of India honored Dr. Mashelkar with 3 of the highest civilian awards, namely Padma Shri in 1991, Padma Bhushan in 2000, and Padma Vibhushan in 2014. He has received a record of 47 honorary doctorates from universities around the world, from London to Pretoria, to Wisconsin, to Monash, to Delhi. Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause while I welcome Dr. Mashelkar onto the stage to deliver the opening keynote. Sir, please. A louder applause, please. We are truly privileged to have Dr. Mashelkar with us today. Sir.
Thank you very much. As I said, it's a real honor and a privilege. You would be probably surprised by the title, Transformative Leadership. Of course, that's what we are talking about. But from leapfrogging to pole vaulting, what is this pole vaulting? So let me begin by telling you about the genesis of the word pole vaulting, because leapfrogging is something that we know. So where did it all begin? It begins here. I've been on the board of Reliance for 17 years, but also have been the chairman of their Reliance Innovation Council, about which I'll talk a little later. For Reliance, growth is life is something they have believed in. And then innovation as a way of life. Not innovation just done by the research scientists, but innovation across, so as to say, whether it is sales, marketing, manufacturing, and so on and so forth. Because innovation is all about doing things differently to make a difference, as simple as that. And that's what they have been doing. So if you combine the two, you will find it becomes innovation-led growth. But there is something special about their growth. That growth is exponential growth. If you just see 30 years ago, they were $1 billion company. In 15 years, they became $10 billion. And next 10 years, they became $100 billion. So they believe in 10x, so as to say, not 2x. All right? Now $250 billion, and as I know that in the next 3-4 years, there will be $500 billion. So they have believed in exponential growth. Now you can't get exponential growth by doing incremental innovation. It has to be disruptive innovation. It has to be game-changing innovation. I remember after one of the meetings of the Innovation Council, Mukesh and I were sitting together, and he said, Doc, we must leapfrog. To something, I do not remember what the context was. So I said, Mukesh, do you know why the frog leaps? He said, I don't know. I said, I'll tell you. Scientists have shown that he leaps because he's afraid of the predator. And it's an instant reaction by which he jumps a few feet. And then again a few feet as a reaction. Do you want to do that? Because you are afraid of the competitors, you just leapfrog a few feet? Or should we pole vault? The size of the pole is the size of your aspiration. And that pole vaulting is what actually caught his imagination. And he said, why don't we create a leadership program? We are talking about transformative leadership. And he actually created a program which is called Beyonders. The name is significant Beyond us means going beyond the realms of possibilities, all right? That's what the leadership got. And what were they supposed to do? We said we'll create 100 innovation leaders who will pole vault and not just leapfrog, but we'll give them massive opportunities through growth initiatives. And their simple task is making impossible possible. Very simple, okay? What are the characteristics of such leaders? They set unreasonable goals, not reasonable. They challenge the conventional wisdom. They get ordinary people to do extraordinary things, because getting ordinary people to do ordinary things is no issue, but to get them to do extraordinary things is a big challenge. They suffer from divine discontent. No matter what you reach or achieve, you say, my best is yet to come. And they convert adversity into the opportunity. But the basic purpose is to create an exponential value, not 10%, but 10x, through innovation and leadership. Now, if you just see, did they pole vault? If you look at the mobile data consumption, this is where India stood. This is where the rest of the world stood. And after... So, actually going back, since you probably didn't see the slide, India was here in terms of millions of GB per month, and the rest of the world was here. And this is what happened. So actually, India pole vaulted from 156th position to number 1 position in mobile data usage within 1 year after the introduction of Jio. So we did not leapfrog from 156 to 100, but pole vaulted to number 1, and that's where we are today. Now, if you see, Jio changed the game. If you see before Jio and after Jio, 4G Voltapen used to cost $300. It was brought down to $23. Everything is 10x, by the way, not 10%. Data per GB cost $5 to $0.01. Voice expenditure was $1.5 per minute, and it was brought down to 0, as you know. Not only that, they launched new devices. Just now you have seen Jio Bharat, because there is India at 75, but also Bharat at 75. We have to realize that. And for that Bharat, they created this $12 device. I gave the opening plenary talk in Silicon Valley recently on 29 July, and I proudly showed to them what we have been able to achieve, and they were very, very surprised indeed. Now, if you look at pole vaulting to reach 50 million users, telephone took 50 years, mobile took 12 years, YouTube took 4 years, Facebook 3 years, Twitter 2 years, and that was the record. And Reliance Jio pole vaulted in 83 days. Now, you would say that, oh my God, if you have deep pockets, you can do that. I'm sorry. There's a huge innovation that is involved here, by the way. I could separately talk to you about that. If you see the impact that we have had, because finally it is ideas to impact that matters. If you see pole vaulting in mobile data consumption, 67x in last 8 years, and there's a wonderful exponential. I love exponentials, by the way, absolutely. And if you see the smartphone users have increased by 4x in just 3 years. And if you look at pole vaulting in real-time transactions, it's a matter of pride. You can see the jump that has taken place. And in 2022, for example, UPI clocked over 74 billion transactions. That is 46% of world's transactions. Nobody would have believed that that would basically happen. You see, for example, pole vaulting of Indian startups. India produced more unicorns in 2021 than all previous years put together. In fact, in 2016, 1 unicorn per year, rising to almost 1 unicorn per week, 44, not 52, and you can see the exponential jump. So there is something wonderful about that exponential feeling, by the way. In fact, I was looking at an analogy. You know, there is a lake, and there are lilies. And those lilies have a wonderful habit of doubling up every day. Exponentials is all about doubling up. And on day 30, the pond is full. So what would it be on day 29? Half. Day 28, quarter. 27, 1/8. And 26, 1/16. 1/16 is 6%. So if you visit that lake on, let's say, the 16th day, you will find it empty. 94% is empty. And you will give it up. But you go after 4 days and you find it is full. India is lilies in the pond on the 26th day. Because all these things that I'm showing you, exponential, have happened just in 6, 7, 8 years, so as to say. And I have many other examples. In fact, my title of my talk, it was a 1-hour talk in Silicon Valley, was making India, building New India as an exponential inspirator. All right, there is a big story around it, and what can stop that exponential growth also was one of the points. Let's not forget that although we had 1 unicorn per week in 2021, entire 2023, the first 6 months we had no unicorn. All right, and there are reasons for that. So there is a coupling of this as far as. Now, pole vaulting leaders paradigm shift in innovation strategy. That means we are now talking about completely different way of doing it. We have been largely followers for a long time in technology. Then we prided ourselves as fast followers. Any new drug that will come anywhere in the world, we were able to copy in 18 months because our laws allowed it. And of course it helps us because we became the biggest generic producers, low cost, in the world. There is no question about that. But our time has come where we lead. And then, of course, as I said, not leapfrog, but pole vault. Now, that's a big change in mindset. We wrote a book, this Leapfrogging to Pole Vaulting, which won actually the Business Book of the Year award in 2019. You can see me with Ravi Pandit, my co-author. He comes from an industrial background. I'm a scientist, and it was a matter of pride to sort of win this. But it was not so much. It has also become national bestseller. But it is not so much the number of copies that you sold, but the number of ideas from the book that actually were adopted by people, and I will talk to you about that. Now, if you look at the characteristics of pole vaulting leadership as against the usual, first, they believe in revolution, not just renovation, not 1%, 5%, all right, the big change. The second is innovation new to the world, not just to company or country, all right, that's very important. The third is unprecedented cost performance features, not just marginal cost or feature improvement. And the next one is entirely new products and services, not just tinkering into existing ones. So we are talking about a different level of innovation. And next practice, not just best practice. I'm not very fond of best practice, by the way, because when you do best practice, you are following somebody. We have to create next practice, which becomes best practice for others and who follow us. I think there is a change of mindset that we have to actually do. Now, you would say, you know, for somebody like Mukesh, with billions of dollars sort of available for you, you can use scale to bring down the costs. Because if the scales were not there, if you could not have 500 million customers, you would not have been able to sort of bring down the cost. So is it always that the scale that reduces the cost and yet you can create high technology? No. I will show to you something where there are remarkable examples. In my mother's name, I created Anjani Mashelkar Inclusive Innovation Award. I have created a foundation in her name. And you can see the winners are the following. The winners are only those who create the next practice, not the best practice. Winners are only those who make high technology work for the poor. Because making high technology work for the rich, very easy. Making low technology work for the poor, very easy. But making high technology work for the poor is very difficult. These two criteria. And I'm very proud to show you that we have had 14 awardees so far. Young people like that about whom I will talk. They have created sort of incredible impact. Look at this Machine Ingawale, who created this Touch HB. It's a 10 non-invasive hemoglobin test. If you see the best practice and next practice, best was invasive with needles. You take your blood out and then give it to some instrument lab, isn't it? And you require people to do that. He said, no, non-invasive, no needles. Cost per test may be 150 rupees. This is just 10 rupees. So he created this Touch 1HB first, where you use high technology, photoplethysmography, spectrophotometry, advanced software for photon scattering. Okay? Now the interesting part about best practice is like what chairman of Sony used to say, I will displace my own products myself, otherwise my competitors will displace those for me. Okay? So he displaced his own best practice that he had created by his next practice, which is just a camera. And this camera is one which captures the picture of conjunctiva by using method of reflectance photometry. Can you just imagine the breakthrough? All that you have to do is to look into the camera, and you know what your hemoglobin is, and this is going places now. If you just see these awardee in terms of breast cancer screening, best practice to next practice, and he created, and normally the best practice is biopsy, mammography, etc. But he created this $1 non-invasive screening, as we can see here, and it is ultra portable, accurate, minimal training, wireless, cloud connected, and you get absolutely instant results. And this has this has gone to now 20 plus countries, and millions of screenings have been done. In fact, some of the state governments have adopted this. I was in Goa about a month ago, and we saw Goa Chief Minister launching a program to use iBreast, because it just costs $1 per screening, by the way. He has had a target of about 1 lakh, out of which 70,000 he had already done. You can see what difference it can sort of make. Then we have here $5 for an ECG test, because here the matter is a very simple one, that when you have to do an ECG, you go lie down, there are 12 leads, and then nurse comes, takes ECG, and then you get the paper readout, and so on and so forth, etc. He created a portable ECG, which I'm carrying in my pocket. 2.6 million screenings have been done by this. It has gone to 16 countries, including Europe, US FDA certificate, and all that, etc. Cost just 4,000 rupees, called Sanket. How does it work? You have two sensors here. You put your two thumbs for just 15 seconds, and you have sensor here. This is your heart. 15 seconds, 15 seconds. And if you have downloaded an app called Sanket, a medical grade ECG comes to your screen wherever you are. How transformative this is. When an old lady in a village gets pain at the middle of the night, she has to be put on a motorcycle or a jeep or a bullock cart or whatever, and she has to be taken to, not anymore. This is completely transformative. I think the main point I'm trying to make is that moving from best practice to next practice is done by all these young people, because these are the people whose purpose of life is not to make billions, but to bring smile on the faces of billions. And it is amazing that all of them have come from companies like Samsung, Google, and so on and so forth. They have left their jobs, because that is the leadership with purpose, I would say. These are the future leaders that we need to generate. There is this powerful part to best practice to next practice, moving from improvement to experiment. Experiment is not a word that you will see, by the way. That means exponential improvement. And here, I wrote this book with my young colleague, Harsh, who is half my age. I am 81, by the way, and he's 39, so he's less than half my age. but he's twice as good as far as his intellect is concerned. So the basic idea is what I have said here, that the unexpected connection is more powerful than the one that is obvious. Okay? And therefore, if you start connecting the relatively unconnectable, you can get breakthroughs. There are many examples, inspiring examples in the book. Ford reduced car assembly time from 12 hours to 1.5 hours. And the cost came down by a factor of 10. Otherwise, they were very expensive. And the rest is history. How did he do that? Where did he get the inspiration from? From an animal slaughterhouse. When he went there, he saw that the cut part of the animal, because it was meat packaging, the worker did not go to the cut parts. The cut parts went to him, and that is where he got the assembly line approach. Now, what is the connection between car manufacturing and animal slaughterhouse? He connected and created a history. You look at Formula One car. The question was, if we can change 4 tires of a Formula One car in 2 seconds, why does it take 2 hours to do a changeover in the toothpaste factory from one brand to another? And they use those particular principles, basically some of them, and GSK's toothpaste manufacturing plant, if you saw, they could produce 2 million more tubes without sort of any capital investment. And there are many more examples, like seeing similarities between F1 pit crew and an emergency room, how they connected with each other. How, for example, the combination of behavioral economics and technology from the gaming industry to physiotherapy. Or, for example, there is a very interesting chapter on concept of banking. Money is known, but can you develop a concept of banking time? You know what it means? When you are young, you do some service, and that time is banked. And one day you get old, and then you can cash it on because somebody else will do that and build his own account. It's a fascinating idea, and so on and so forth. So you will be getting the books. I understand you have got some copies already, and please do go through this. I think the central point is, when you talk about disruptive, game-changing innovation, you have to go beyond the obvious and start connecting, and these young people are doing it. Now, when I was writing the book, Pole Vaulting, somebody asked me an interesting question. He said, how do we assure an assured success in a pole vault? Something Sanghamitra we were discussing, right? So, there is this 3rd chapter of the book. There is an assured innovation framework, because if you meet these criteria, like affordability, then will follow scalability. Sustainability is very critical. It has 4 factors, by the way. The first is, don't trust the government and depend on the government subsidies, because government change, subsidies go. Your business model can't be based on subsidies. It has to be standalone, robust business model. Second is environment. Anything that is not green will not go, as simple as that. The third is the policies of the government, for example. Suddenly the regulatory policies change, and you are in and then you are out. Most important is the society. Society must accept you, like GM foods. Great technology, but society will not accept it. Or nuclear, there are doubts, all right? So therefore, that is very critical. Then universal, user-friendliness. Of course, you always talk about customer friendliness, but that's what is important. It has to be rapid in terms of mind to marketplace, otherwise your competitors will take over. And excellence is very critical in terms of the technologies that you use. And finally, distinctive. It can't be me too. It has to be strongly IP protected. That is one of the major challenge that India has. And in the book you will find, for example, examples of where these sort of companies or technologies were leading at a point in time and they don't exist. Look at Napster, for example. It was downloading of music, free downloading of music, right? And they had 60 million users. Do they exist today? They don't. The reason is they failed the assured framework. Okay? When they started, they were assured, but later on they were not. Why? What did they fail? Because the Society of Musicians said, you can't download my music free. And they're gone. So they did not become sustainable, the societal role. If you look at BlackBerry, oldies like me have used a BlackBerry. It had some 80 million customers. They don't exist today because they did not remain distinctive, so as to say. All right, when touch phone came and new technologies came, etc., they were still sticking to, like a business machine, their keyboard, so as to say. All right, and I can go on and on. So I think it is very important to look at this matrix. As a matter of fact, this matrix has become very popular. I'll tell you a little later. Look at Jio, for example. Is it affordable? Yes. 4 rupees per GB and voice free. Affordable. Scalable? Yes. They have close to 500 million customers. Is it sustainable? Yes. It is making profit. Is it universal? Yes. Look at those two ladies. Their income inequality may be 1:100, but they still have access equality. Rapid? Are they rapid? Yes, of course. I showed to you 83 days. Are they excellence in terms of technology? Yes. 4G LTE, when the rest of the companies were having 2G, 3G, they went for it, and distinctive. So this is a very interesting diagram, and even great Google Glass, for example, failed because it was distinctive and excellent, but it was not affordable, and therefore it was not scalable, and so on and so forth, not user-friendly. Because when you are wearing a Google Glass, you did not know what you were doing. Maybe you went into a movie theater and downloaded it, or as you were speaking, etc. So I think this is a very important criteria. I think the big challenge is assured is not a static but a dynamic matrix, and it changes with time. It is semi-quantitative, by the way. You can put sort of numbers on it. And you will find that it is now very widely used by research institutes, by startups, by SMEs, by corporates, by investors, by innovation accelerators, by government departments, industry associations, and also in policymakers. And you have some of these examples here. I began using this, by the way, when Honorable Prime Minister announced Swachh Bharat, at that time, there was a standing committee created under my chairmanship to select the best technologies in drinking water and sanitation. And I started using that matrix. It is still being used, by the way. All right? And that then spread sort of elsewhere. I think in ABP group also you might want to think about how that matrix can be used. It has gone even, there are Monash University, for example, uses it, and so on and so forth. The big challenge in pole vaulting innovation, and I come to the leadership issue now, is people, most important. It's not the mind, it's the mindset that matters. The process and technology, these three are very, very critical. The purpose embedded in an inspiring motto can be a timeless inspirator, by the way, since we talk about purpose with leadership. How do they do that? For example, Amazon, day one mindset. Look at Apple, think different. Look at Spotify, music for everyone. That's their purpose. Look at Airbnb, belong anywhere. Beyond the obvious, that's what TCS says. Growth is life, Reliance says, but of course now it has changed to exponential growth is life. That's a different matter. So these can be inspiring because that aligns all the things. I do not know what sort of ABP group of companies have as a motto, but as I said, leadership with purpose is of course something that we have seen beyond. So that is very, very important from a leadership perspective. Then radical transformation needs pole vaulting leaders, jumping beyond the realms of possibilities, as I said. Now, what is the challenge with pole vaulting? You just see, she's pole vaulting now, okay? But how do you pole vault? It's not leapfrog, where you just instantly react and jump. It requires preparation. You start with a zero velocity and then you accelerate, and it is the kinetic energy that will take you over. Now, supposing while you are accelerating, there are speed breakers. What happens? You start all over again. And that is one of the greatest worries. For example, speed breakers due to risk-averse mindsets about new ideas. That's one of the biggest challenge. As soon as a new idea is mentioned, too risky. Then, suppose it fails. There is always a sort of feeling of failure. Then, impossible, never done before. That is something shocking. Did we have iPhone, say 20 years ago? We did, but could I do a presentation like what I'm doing at the moment? No. So that is one of the incredible things. Then always somebody has tried it before. And supposing you have good English and you want to use it to kill an idea, let me play devil's advocate. But what it means is that I'm scared. So my suggestion, Dhruva, for your consideration, is that any time we are discussing a new idea in the group, put these 5 outside the board and say anybody who utters any of these will be out of the room. Otherwise, you can't actually sort of go for a new idea. That's very important in terms of leadership. Then common speed breakers reducing the kinetic energy. One is complacency. You know the famous story of Kodak. You know, and what happened to them. Cynicism, always, for a new idea, there is a cynicism. Risk aversion. Of course, there are vested interests, both within and outside, that actually become killers. Bureaucracy is the greatest killer, and I don't have to speak about bureaucracy in India. We were just discussing that in the morning, Sanghamitra. Restrictive regulations can be a killer, and we have experienced that in India. And of course, policy limitations. Look at the example of cynicism. So when, I've been on the Microsoft External Research Advisory Board for 5 years, and I met Steve Ballmer. He's a great, inspiring guy, okay? But what happened when iPhone came? I'm quoting him here. $500, fully subsidized, with a plan. I said that's the most expensive phone in the world. And it doesn't appeal to business customers because it doesn't have a keyboard, which makes it not a very good email machine. Because he looked at that as just an email machine for business. And you know what it is today. It is everything, as we could quite. So even great leaders like Steve Ballmer had that cynicism. I think we have to sort of drop that. I think the key characteristics of pole vaulting innovation leaders, first, they find opportunities where others see nothing. Second, they convert problems into an opportunity. Third, they set quantum goals. Fourth, they drive discontinuity, bet on risky ideas. And most importantly, they do not know it cannot be done. Very important. And also they see what everyone else sees, but think of what nobody else sees. That's a very important characteristics. So when we build leadership programs, I think some of the good things to do are these. My own experiments, I'll tell you in this. While I was director of National Chemical Laboratory, I created a kite flying fund. What is kite flying? An idea which has a chance of success of 1 in 100, I will fund it. Of course, I reserved only 1% of the budget, otherwise I would have been out of the job. And it is sort of wonderful. People felt, oh, this crazy director wants to bet on sort of risky ideas. And, the mindset change, some breakthrough papers that came. When I went to Delhi, heading 40 laboratories in CSIR, I wanted to carry the same idea, but didn't want to call it kite flying. Because Parliament was just 1 kilometer away, and they would say public funds are being spent on kite flying. So I called it a new idea fund. And it is amazing the kind of breakthroughs that actually came. And then in the public-private partnerships, I created a New Millennium Indian Technology Leadership Initiative. Leadership was the key. So here, it's very interesting to see what we did. Look at this diagram very carefully. India had operated in the lower quadrant, where markets were certain, technology was certain. Markets were certain, already established, so no effort in market development and all that. Technology was certain because you could copy, all right, or reverse engineer, or whatever, etc. We moved India into a different quadrant altogether. And that was where technologies were uncertain and markets were uncertain. Okay? That was real risk-taking. And it was government money that was actually given. And can you just believe it? I had proposed it at 0% interest to be given to private sector. Public money going to private sector. No? It was not venture capital, it was adventure capital. Because we are looking at an unknown, invisible, and trying to enter that field. Now, I can give 1 hour lecture on what has happened on that. Not everything succeeded. But there are some reliant success. For example, if you look at this hydrogen fuel bus that was launched in December 2021 with public-private partners, you can see in the middle Ravi Pandit, KPIT Technology CEO, and Ashish Lele, a genius engineering scientist. And this bus has been launched. And the beauty is, it is ahead of the rest of the world. Provides 400 per kilowatt, $400 as against $1,000, $1,200, and 95% is indigenized. It has been already commercialized. You will see announcement at the end of this particular month on what's happening on this. Important point was that we entered this field when nobody talked about fuel cells. 2002, we started work. Okay, now everybody talks about fuel cells. So I think that leadership attribute of taking risk is very important. I think finally the key drivers are talent, technology, and trust. Trust is very important. I want to narrate to you a very interesting conversation I had with Bill Gates when I was on their advisory board. And, we had a dinner come discussion. And I remember Nandan Nilekani being there, and Anand Mahindra was there, and a few others. And Bill Gates told us a very interesting story. He said he was invited to a Harvard commencement lecture. And he said that I'm the most successful dropout. Okay, and he narrated something that had happened to him when he was young. He was 18 or 19 or whatever. And computers were coming, hardware was coming. There was a factory in Albuquerque, and that factory was going to produce hardware. He said if they are producing hardware, they will require software. Okay, and he phoned them up and said, I want to offer you software. And he told us he half thought they will keep the phone down, because a young person in those early days offering software. You know what the company said? We are not ready. Come after a month. And you know what was Bill Gates' response? He said, thank God they said come after a month, because I did not have software that I was offering. Trust. They trusted a young man, and young man trusted him that he will give. I think we should reflect on whether we have that trust in our young people and sort of risky ideas and so on and so forth. I think that's a very critical. I would finally say that this word pole vaulting is catching up. General Bipin Rawat sort of read the book. He was very inspired, and in his interview, I think it is on YouTube, you can go there. And he said, time has come to move from leapfrogging to pole vaulting. I think it is time that our nation actually do that, and we create leadership, which is a pole vaulting leadership, of which I have said. I'd like to finish in 3-4 minutes. I mean, this is like light emitting diodes, just 7 years, we moved from 0.1% to 88%. That's how the country has to actually progress. I'm 81, as I said. I have learned a lot in my own life, so I'll just take a few minutes to sort of share with you what I've learned, many times by succeeding, but a lot of time by failing. I think the first most important is aspirations are your possibilities. Keep them high. But for you, as also for society, our beloved nation, that's the big purpose that we are actually talking about. You know, National Chemical Laboratory, for example, when I took over, 89, 2 years before liberalization, only thing we were doing was copying, reverse engineering, import substitution, protected. I said, let National Chemical Laboratory be International Chemical Laboratory. We'll export our knowledge to the rest of the world. Okay? And within 2 years, the same scientists we are copying, we remember licensing 3 US patents to General Electric. In what area? Polycarbonate, where they had 40% world market share. Same people saying that let's raise our aspiration. Second, I always tell people, like instant coffee, no instant success, work hard in silence, let success make all the noise. I felt very sorry for Narayan Murthy when he said work hard, and everybody pounced on him. I think this is not done. This is not done. Purpose, perseverance, passion. As you mentioned, I don't have to explain. Too early to quit. Winners are never quitters. Quitters are never winners. Fail is first attempting learning. Your best guru is your last mistake, as long as you learn from it. If you don't learn, then it won't. The fourth one is when doors of opportunity that you keep on knocking don't open, create your own doors. I remember when I came back in 1976, India was a poor country. I needed an equipment, Weisenberg rheogonymometer, model R18, I still remember, because I was trained in non-Newtonian fluid mechanics. DGTD clearance, not manufactured in India certificate. It took 2 years to get Weisenberg. So I asked myself a simple question. I'm not getting that equipment. What is the equipment that I have? This. So I went into mathematical modeling and simulation, okay, which requires only this. And you know, one of country's highest prize is Bhatnagar Prize, SS Bhatnagar Prize, reserved for scientists under 45. You have a Bhatnagar Prize winner here. I am a Bhatnagar Prize winner. But imagine, had I not shifted and opened my own doors, I would still be waiting, okay? And the last point of my talk is there is no limit to human endurance, no limit to human achievement, no limit to human imagining, excepting the ones that you put on yourself. There's an interesting story. Professor C.N.R. Rao, Bharat Ratna, he has been my guru, guide, friend, philosopher. I became FRS, Fellowship of Royal Society. After Nobel Prize, that is considered as the highest prize. And in 363 years, there have been only 3 engineering scientists who have won that honor. One is my... Yeah. So one is Professor Sharma, my guru, then Professor Rodam Narsiva is no more, and then myself. So it's a great honor. So I called Professor C.N.R. Rao. I said, sir, I have become FRS. I thought he will jump with joy, and you know what was his response? Not bad. I was very disappointed. Then I got some other honors, you know, American Academy of Arts and Science, only 7 after 760. I called him, not bad. Then I said, 3rd or 7th doesn't work. Then US National Academy of Inventors, I became the first. So I said, now we will say yes. I called him Sanghamitra. You know what was it? Not bad. Then I got upset. I said, sir, what do I have to do to impress you? And what he said, that is my last message for you. He said, Mashelkar, you are climbing on a ladder of excellence which has no limit. Accepting the limit you put on yourself. What does it translate into? It translates into the following, that no matter what you achieve, you have to say, my best is yet to come. So my message to young people, students when I talk to them, is that whether you are 18 or 80, every day in the morning you have to get up and say, my best is yet to come, and today is going to be the day, whether you are 18 or 80. Can you see if 1.4 billion Indians do it every day in the morning? And my best not just for myself, for my society, for my India. What would India be? Where would it be? Right up there in the Committee of Nations. Thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry? Yeah, I go down? No. Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mashelkar, for that invigorating session of INFOCOM 2023. Please, a huge round of applause for Dr. Mashelkar once again for that wonderful keynote address. And I will request him to kindly remain on stage. We are doing the setup. This is the fireside interactive session that we're going to have with Dr. Sanghamitra Bandyopadhyay. Dr. Sanghamitra Bandyopadhyay joined the Indian Statistical Institute as a faculty member and became the director in 2015. Since 2020, she is continuing in her second tenure as the director of the institute. At present, she is on the Prime Minister's Science, Technology and Innovation Advisory Council. In 2022, she was given the Padma Shri Award for Science and Engineering by the Government of India. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Dr. Sanghamitra Bandyopadhyay and Dr. Mashelkar, as I request Dr. Sanghamitra Bandyopadhyay to carry on with the session. Ma'am, please.
Thank you very much. And that was a pleasure, Dr. Mashelkar, listening to you. It really inspired me, at least, and I'm sure the entire audience. Before I start, I would, asking you questions, I just want to recall a certain incident 23 years back. I'm sure you do not remember. I was a young researcher there, young faculty member at ISI, and I had applied for the Young Scientist Award of the Indian Science Congress, and you happened to be the president of the Indian Science Congress at that time. I had won that award, and when the certificate was issued, it said I had completed my PhD in 1998-99, and the certificate said, Mrs. Sanghamitra Bandyopadhyay. My male colleagues had doctor, because they had completed their PhDs, or some who were still pursuing, were addressed as Dr. X, Dr. So-and-so. My certificate said Mrs. Sanghamitra Bandyopadhyay. I was a little upset. I came back to Calcutta. That was in Pune that year. And I wrote to Dr. Mashelkar, the president of the Indian the Indian Science Association, Indian Science Congress Association. And I expressed my disappointment that my gender was more important than the degree that I held. And I was pleasantly surprised to get a second certificate, signed by Dr. Mashelkar, which said Dr. Sanghamitra Bandyopadhyay. And I was very happy. Maybe now, with the maturity that I have now, and with the understanding of the society is changing, but with the understanding, I would not have written, possibly. But that was a young me at that time, 23 years back. These things were important at that time, don't remain important that much now. But what was important was your certificate, that you took note of the disappointment of a young researcher and sent a fresh certificate. That touched me. And I learned from that I should not ignore the young students that I have, or anybody, for that matter, who writes to me for certain advice or for certain help or whatever, that I should not ignore, I should respond. And that is what, sir, I have learned from you, and I have also passed it on to my students. Even today, when some collaborators or some researchers I don't know write to me for certain code or certain papers, I don't hold the code myself, but I always forward it to my students who have developed that code, and they usually, 99% of the time, they respond to those people. So that is what I learned. Thank you very much. So I had a few questions which I had in mind. You have been a transformative leader yourself. You have led the CSIR system, where you brought in a transformation in a very big way. The National Chemical Laboratories, which you said yourself in the talk just a while back, that you transformed the National Chemical Laboratory to the International Chemical Laboratory. And for your transformation that you effected in the CSIR, in fact, you probably have been the only scientist to have won the J.R.D. Tata Corporate Leadership Award. That is usually given to people from the industry. But you possibly were the only scientist because you transformed CSIR system. The transformation of the NCL, National Chemical Laboratory, to the International Chemical Laboratory is actually a matter of the emerging economics course in the Harvard Business School. It is a matter of discussion there. So what were one or two key initiatives, if you could just put your finger on, which led you to succeed in these transformations? What is it that you did? One or two most important things that you did, that you were able to transform not just one single laboratory, but to an organization like CSIR, which has 40 different laboratories. And also, you brought in transformation as the global president of the Global Research Alliance, which actually looks at not just one organization like CSIR, but across the world, in the Asia Pacific, in Europe, in the US. It was looking at CSIR-like organizations in all these countries with 60,000 scientists. What were the key things, maybe one or two that you could put your finger on that you did to make these transformations?
Yeah. No, it's a very interesting question, and I would, since you asked about one or two, I will give you only a couple of them. To illustrate the first one, let me get back to a lesson that I learned in my childhood, which helped me. As I told you, I was born in a very poor family. My father died when I was 6. My mother brought me up to Mumbai. 2 meals a day was a challenge. I walked, I studied under street lights, and the breakthrough came to me because I stood 11th among 135,000 students in Maharashtra state and got a Tata scholarship. That's how I am here today. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. The basic challenge that my mother had was the following. I went to a municipal school, studied in Marathi, by the way, in my own language. In the 7th standard, I had stood first with some 88% marks. And I had to go to a secondary school. That meant I was walking barefoot, but I needed shoes. I needed a uniform, tuition fees and other things, 21 rupees. And it took 21 days for my mother to get it from a housemaid who was working in a Gujarati family. That was her saving that she gave. But in that time, what happened was that all the admissions in good schools were closed. And I went to a poor school. Believe me, that was a breakthrough in my life, that I went to that poor school, because that poor school had rich teachers. One of them was my science teacher, Principal Bhave. He did not believe in chalk and talk. He believed in seeing, learning by doing, and the rest of it. And one of the experiments that he did gave me the lesson of my life, which has helped me, including in institutional transformation. What was the lesson? He took us out into the sun one day. He had a convex lens in his hand and a piece of paper. And he wanted to show us how to find the focal length of a convex lens. And as you know, he moved the paper, you move the lens up and down till the brightest spot on the paper comes. And then he said, this is focal length. And they held it for some time, and the paper burnt. For some reason, he turned to me and he said, Mashelkar, if you focus like this, your energies, you can achieve anything in the world. All right? That did two things for me. The first was, science is so fantastic, I must become a scientist. That simple experiment made me go for science. And second is focus and you can achieve anything. But as I grew old, I saw more meaning in it. What is a convex lens? What are sun's rays? They are all parallel. And what is the property of parallel lines? They never meet. What does convex lens do? It makes them meet. Correct? Look at our country today. Race, religion, language. What we require is a convex lens leadership. What does concave lens leadership do? It takes them apart. In organizations, we require convex lens leadership. Right? So that lesson was very important. So when I became director of National Chemical Laboratory, we saw inorganic chemistry division, organic chemistry division, polymer chemistry division, division. No two divisions will talk to each other. I said, nothing doing. Team NCL, one NCL. I changed the funding pattern and everything. When I went to CSIR, 40 labs. No two labs will talk to each other. In fact, they will compete with each other, with the same client. You know? I said, nothing doing. Team CSIR, one CSIR. And we succeeded in that. Because the CSIR transformation that we talk about has been now rated in his book, Jayan Narlikar's Scientific Age, among the top 10 achievements of Indian science and technology in the 20th century. But that was all because they all came together. In fact, I remember 11 May 1998, when we had in Bangalore the directors' conference, all 40 directors were there and they signed, basically, the Bangalore Declaration, which said, India matters to us, we want to matter to India more. And as a matter of fact, I remember when I left as a DG CSIR, where no two labs will talk to each other, there was one project where 19 labs were actually working together. So you said one or two, so this is one. The second one is what Professor C.N.R. Rao says. There is no limit to what you can achieve. National Chemical Laboratory, when I took over as DG of CSIR in 1989, they were doing import substitution. So anytime I went to industry, if we had a breakthrough, they would say, but have they done it? Has Europe done it? Has US done it? So on the very first day, I remember 1st June 1989, I took over, I addressed in a hall that we have, you have been there, 540 capacity, there were 1,100 people there. And I said, let National Chemical Laboratory be International Chemical Laboratory. You know? And the interesting part was, and I said we should be able to license our patents to even the leaders, etc. And I remember one fellow coming and saying that, look, because I had mentioned about General Electric, you know, and he said, you know, GE's R&D budget is 2.5 times India's R&D budget. Then I gave him the first principle. It is not the power of the budget that matters, it is the power of idea that matters. And we demonstrated that by just now what I mentioned, that a company who had 40% world market share, we licensed our own patents to them because they had never thought about that. It was the power of ideas, so as to say. So if you have to summarize, I think it is these two. Aspirations are your possibilities and power of ideas, not power of budget. And convex lens leadership. 1, 2, 3.
So just to take on from your convex lens leadership, you see, if you hold the convex lens long enough, it burns that paper where the sunlight focuses. It burns that paper. So do you think at some point of time, after the convergence has taken place, the leadership should, you know, sort of take a back seat so that it really doesn't burn the paper?
No, I think if you are bringing people together, that is the basic idea.
And that has to be a continuous process.
Absolutely,
Sure.
absolutely. It all depends upon that. What is the world's problem today? It is exactly that, no?
Right.
We are moving from techno-nationalism to techno-globalism. Now we are moving to techno-nationalism once again. You know?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So, sir, in today's lecture, as well as in multiple fora, you've been stressing upon the importance of transformative rather than incremental leadership. And I personally at ISI, we have experienced that when you led the ISI review committee as its chairman. Now, the question is that some leaders may be born, they are born leaders, but many leaders are made. And for making leaders, it is very important that the ecosystem is conducive. I would love to know your thoughts on how the leading research and development, the higher education institutions in India are performing on this count. Could you just, let's say about 3 things that they are doing right and 3 things that needs a significant improvement?
Yeah. No, it's very interesting that we lament the fact that our institutions don't appear in the top 100 or top 200, etc. Barely do we make our presence felt. So therefore, I think there is a way to go. We have not arrived there. It is very clear. But at the same time, and you rightly said, leaders are to be created, I think what is very important is the lesson that I learned from Dr. Ashok Ganguly to start with. You know, I was I acted as advisor for transforming Unilever's engineering science base, I remember. And there was a function that was held in London between Royal Society and Unilever. And I had just taken over as the Director General of CSIR. And the very first month I went there, he shook my hands, and you know what he said to me? Ramesh, have you found your successor? 3 weeks, sir. I was in the job for 3 weeks. And he asked me, have you found your successor? That was his lesson to me, how you will be judged as a leader. So you as a leader, I as a leader, or anyone as a leader, their success will be determined by their finding their successor. That is where it starts. Because bulk of the time, the leadership challenge is to how to prevent others, from competing and so on and so forth. So that requires big heart. As far as the strengths that we see that are concerned, is that there are people who have a vision. We have the ability to communicate for a leader. That's extremely important because he has to have a shared vision. It cannot be sort of a single vision. And I think it's a question of finally creating an opportunity. I remember there have been 16 Mashelkar committees so far. In fact, there was a saying that when in difficulty, form a Mashelkar committee. And right from Bhopal disaster to national auto fuel policy, etc. And one of the first one was regional engineering colleges. And it was my committee which said that they should become NITs, National Institute of Technology, and give them that freedom and funding from center, not states, because that was their last priority and so on. And in my own handwriting, I wrote that if you give the right leadership and right freedom of thought and action, some of them will become better than IITs. And today, if you see the top list, you will find that is happening. Because the same leaders, once that opportunity was given to them, they could actually rise to the occasion and make them, all right? So I think it's a question of trust within yourself, within others, and team building that I have explained again and again and again and again, getting final review. As far as the weakness is concerned, I'll tell you in the government system, there are usual questions. Both of us talked in the morning about bureaucracy and not reducing, it is increasing. Okay. Now, there are people who say, thank you very much, but I will do my act. I'll tell you, I have been chairman of the governing council of ISIR Kolkata, ISIR Mohali, okay? And I've been chairman of IIT Gandhinagar's, let's say, governing council. And I have seen leaders of different kind, for example. Like, for example, the director of IIT Gandhinagar, on the very first day, we said at the drop of a hat, their administration will go to the headquarters asking permission because they were scared, they didn't want to take a responsibility. I said, we'll not go to the headquarters. The governing board is the most powerful, and we'll take the decision without going there, because then some lower division clerk writes something and the whole thing gets up. And we did that. He had the guts to do that. I'm talking about Professor Jain. Okay? So I think a lot of them lack that I would say, that courage, to take on the system and do it. It is possible to do that. Government's conditions also, but also I think the most important part is the aspirational part. You have to have fire in your own belly and you have to fire others, basically. Now, if you keep your aspirations low, then you will achieve low. So I think we need that particular mindset training, so as to say. I think that is extraordinarily important. Don't get bogged down by the government bureaucracy. When you want, you can do it, as a matter of fact. It's not impossible to do it. Like the Nimitli program. you know, we sent the interesting story, as a matter of fact, because Nimitli, by definition, was supposed to fail. Because when you are doing leadership, you are not copying. And when you are not copying, you are bound to fail. And I remember the adverse remark that the financial advisor made, saying that by definition, you are supporting failure. So I said, look, your CV, your assessment is done by the ministry. So you write opposing this. You write 1 page, I'll write 2 pages, and overrule them. And you can see what Nimitli has done. So I think that lack of courage.
True. Very correct. Because, in fact, I have also faced multiple challenges. Sometimes it becomes difficult to hold on to that belief that behind every challenge is an opportunity. But if we can convince ourselves, which I have been, at least till now, able to convince myself that there is an opportunity in every challenge. And I have asked myself again and again to be patient and to look for that opportunity. Most of the time, that opportunity has actually presented itself.
Yeah, and I'm a witness to that. As a chairman of ISI review committee, when we set the vision, I have seen you in terms of the courage that you have, you know. So and that's what we require as an institutional.
Right. So now from the higher education institutions to the school education, because we need to build citizens with the right balance of inquisitiveness, commitment, integrity, audacity, and humility. So with reference to school education, again, the same question, what are we doing right and where are we going grossly wrong, which needs immediate attention? And also, along with that, how do we, because India has this problem of numbers, whether it's a problem or an advantage. I mean, if not handled properly, it can become a problem. How do we handle this challenge of reaching out to the millions of students out there for imparting knowledge, at the same time to giving them that attention so that they become empathetic human beings? So, 2 questions here.
Yeah. No, this is a very, very important question because you are looking at the future of India and they are going to build the future of India. So, this is extremely important. I think, Sanghamitra, there are 3 points. The first is right to education. The second is right education. And the third is right way of education. The first is obvious. Right to education has been sort of given and so on. Right education is a big challenge because these are changing times, you know. I have a paper that is titled as Exponential Technology, Industry 4.0 and Jobs in India. And one can quite clearly see the number of jobs that are disappearing and so on. In fact, one expert told me that those children who are in school today, senior classes, they will end up in jobs which don't exist today. They will end up in jobs. So we train people for jobs, no? So therefore, rather than looking at jobs, there are some 5 fundamentals that we have to look at. And those fundamentals are the following. I think the most important is dealing with complexity. Okay? Because this is a hookah word, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. Who would have imagined Ukraine war? Who would have imagined what is happening in Palestine, and Israel, and the rest of it? Who would have imagined COVID? All right, and so on and so forth. So children must be taught to deal with complexity. The second is critical thinking. Third is emotional intelligence, very, very important. The fourth is cognitive flexibility. And fifth is actually co-working. You know, it is not sort of man versus machine, it is man and machine. It is not robots anymore, it is cobots, cooperative robots. You know, so no matter whether you are a chemist or physicist or biologist or a commerce graduate, etc., how do we emphasize building that? The other point is we talk about education as, let's say, what I might like to call as Jnana Savardhan, Buddhi Savardhan, Vichara Savardhan, Vyakti Savardhan, Samata Savardhan. We must look at Mulya Savardhan, the values. Because education without values will create people without values. And that's not what we want, as a matter of fact. The most important part is empathy and compassion. Now, you will ask me, how do you build that compassion? And they have to experience that. You know, it is like, there is a funny joke about people being, an exercise being given to a girl from a rich family. And she says, they had a poor butler, and they had a poor cook, and they had a poor, etc., etc. So they must sense it. So what we do, I'll tell you my learning from my own life. As you know, I've been the chairman of National Innovation Foundation for 18 years, grassroots innovation. And Professor Anil Gupta, whom you know, I look at him as my guru in innovation, both of us. I've been the chairman, he's been the vice chairman. And we started these awards for young people. But we wanted them to build empathy. So what we would do is, in the final selection, and the president would give these awards, by the way, Dr. Kalam and others who followed. And I remember what we'll do is that we'll get them 2 days ahead of the function and send them all to slums. Identify problems, but not just be a part of a problem, be part of a solution. And it is amazing the way, those transformations actually took place. Even young people came out with ideas which were absolutely out of the box. And many of them said, we didn't realize what it is, so I'm going to do something for them. Like I told you, that $1 billion, not building a $1 billion empire, but billion sort of smiles and so on. So I think that entire experiential curve, I'm a great believer in experiential learning, by the way. I think that's what we need to do.
Sure. Thank you very much. And now, taking on from that about bringing smile to faces, etc., we are now seeing the startup culture booming in the country. In your lecture, you mentioned this exponential growth of not just startups being created, but also the unicorns, so meaning they are very successful. So when a young individual toys with this idea of entrepreneurship, which, as you said, many Indians are now looking at, what do you think should be their primary motivation? Adding to personal wealth, becoming rich, or joy of creating and sustaining a company, or adding to the social wealth in terms of generation of jobs and creation of wealth for the nation, or bringing smile? What should a young man or a young woman take as a primary motivation?
Yeah, actually all these Anjani Mashelkar awardees that you saw, who didn't want to make $1 billion, but actually build that smile on the face, are examples. They are highly successful. Many of them have gone to 20 countries. One has gone to 41 countries, by the way. They have created a big imprint. So it is not that they are not making. I think the big thing is the following. There is something called doing well and doing good. What does that mean? For example, Bill Gates makes a lot of money and say, hey, what did I do for the poor? He creates a Bill Gates Foundation. That is doing well and doing good. And that foundation has done a fantastic job. There is no question about that. The second thing is doing well by doing good. That means doing good itself is a business. You understand? Tatas do it, Reliance do it, others do it. When you create affordable excellence for the bottom of the pyramid, you are making good money, but at the same time, you are, bringing sort of a transformation. I think the question is not either this or that. It is this and that. How do we sort of combine it? The other point that I want to make is the following. I mentioned about the Anjani Mashelkar awardees. They are a different class altogether. But I'll tell you the current generation, how sort of some of their thinking is. Their aspiration levels are very high. Okay? And I was talking to a group of young people, and I'm very proud of our higher educational system. You are a product of that. I am a product of that. I did not go abroad to do PhD, for example. although I had fellowships, basically. I did it here, Professor Sharma, my great guru. I said, today's young people, when I told them about higher education, obviously I mentioned about Satya Nadella, product of our education, Microsoft, Sundar Pichai, Google, and so on and so forth. I said, you should, one young girl got up, that's very interesting, and said, sir, do you know, you don't understand us. I said, come on, I thought I said something nice. She said, no, sir, your generation, your only aspiration was to go to US somehow. The second generation, go to US and get a job in Microsoft or Google. The next generation, go there, get a job in Microsoft, become CEO. Not in our case. We want to create our own Google, our own Microsoft here in our India. That is the new generation. Absolutely. So therefore, there are sort of aspirations. So one of the things I didn't mention is that when we talked about creating so many unicorns, I did a study on where do they come from. Do they come from IITs and IIMs and all prestigious institutions? You'll be happily surprised with the result I got. 50% of them came from Tier 3 cities, Tier 2 cities, and some were dropouts. This is democratization of wealth. Why? Because access. Many of these are digital businesses. So what has happened now? You saw the affordability that is given. You saw open source software is there. You don't have to depend upon Microsoft Windows. Your cloud, for example, storage, and so on and so forth. So all these conditions have been given to them, and that is creating that sort of a democratization. And also, I think, in connection with your previous issue, I want to sort of put this before you because you should also realize what we are looking at. The young generation, okay? I'm not talking about now 15, 20, 25-year-old. I'm talking about an 8-year-old. Today's 8-year-old. During COVID, I remember one of my friends, Uday Gujar, came and he brought his 8-year-old grandson to me. His name is Ved Gujar. And he said, we have a problem with this child. So I said, what is the problem? He said, he knows everything. So I said, how can that be a problem? I said, sit down. What is your favorite subject? He said, all subjects. Very confident, 8-year-old boy. No, I said, because it was COVID time, I said, let's focus on biology. He said, fine. Sanghamitra, the first question I asked him was, what is the difference between bacteria and virus? Perfect answer. Then I raised the bar. I said, I've heard something about mutation. What is it? Perfect answer. Then I raised the bar. I said, spike protein. What is it? 8-year-old, huh? Almost 70-80% correct answer. Then we went to DNA. And I had a photograph. You know, the structure of DNA was discovered by Watson and Crick. So I had a photograph in CCMB having a breakfast with Watson. So I showed it to him. Who is he? He couldn't identify him because he was old. Then I said, Watson. Immediately, Watson, Crick, which year? Not only that, but you remember, no? There was a lady scientist who should have got it, shared it. He mentioned her name, 8-year-old. Okay? Then I said, you seem to know a lot about Nobel Prizes. Who is the scientist who has got 2 Nobel Prizes? Madame Curie, which year? Then I said, no, you are wrong. There is another one, Linus Pauling. He said, no, sir. The first one was for science, and the second one was for peace. 8-year-old. That's the new generation. Of course, I told his father that he is using his brain as a storage. He has to use it as an intelligent processor, but with empathy, of course, as we talked about. That is the new generation of India that is coming up, basically. And that offers enormous health. And therefore, the power of the digital, for all, if we make that happen, the scale problem is sort of basically solved. I think that's why when I become dangerously optimistic about India, it is this young generation, because they don't know it can't be done.
Sure, and that is the hope for the country. We'll just close with my last question, sir, and you can add on a little more of your closing comments with the answer to that question. So the question is, you have advocated you have advocated pole vaulting over leapfrogging. The question is that, would you advocate a judicious mixture of the two, keeping in mind that this real-life pole vaulting will not have any landing mat to arrest the fall?
Yes, I think the basic issue, there is always, it is not this or that, it is this and that. Most things move incrementally. But the major transformations take place because of the big ideas, working with speed, working with scale, and working sustainably. And therefore, the subtitle of my book is very important. The title is Leapfrogging to Pole Vaulting, but the subtitle is Creating the Magic of Radical Yet Sustainable Transformation. That cannot take place unless there are sort of big ideas and sort of their implementation. Otherwise, things will move incrementally. My concern about India is that we can't be crawling, we can't be running, we can't be leapfrogging. We need change rapidly and radically, both. I think that's extremely sort of important. And in that sense, basically, it is very important that we have leaders with pole vaulting. I mean, you can quite clearly see the transformation that I talk about, have taken place in 7, 8 years. But let's not forget that that was possible because of the base that we had built. We pride ourselves, some 220 crore doses of vaccinations were given. But how were they given? Covaxin. Who created Covaxin? Krishna Ella. When was Krishna Ella supported? Technology Development Board. I remember, in fact, he mentioned about that in his recent speech, etc. So it is on that platform that we have built. What I'm saying is that having built the platform, not just now, but over a period of time, an opportunity has come where we aspire. Aspirations are our possibility. That's the point.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you, sir. And I hope I enjoyed very much, and I will take home some of the messages that I got to know from you here. And I'm sure the audience will also take some of your points back home and will use it in their organizations. I will conclude. I just can't help it, but I want to, because you mentioned about this importance for acting and acting fast. And with a quote by Rabindranath Tagore, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted and behold, service was joy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was a wonderful.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mashelkar and Dr. Bandyopadhyay. We request you to kindly remain on stage, ma'am. And I request Mr. Didi Purkastha, Director of ABP Group, to kindly come forward and present a memento to both our speakers here. Sir, please. We thank you very much, Dr. R.A. Mashelkar, for those wonderful gems of information. It has been totally overwhelming to listen to you share your journey and the stories, and I'm sure the participants here would agree that they're taking home a lot from this fireside interaction. Thank you, Dr. Sanghamitra Bandyopadhyay. Thank you for this wonderful interaction with Dr. R.A. Mashelkar. A picture frame for posterity. Thank you very much, sir. and we request you to kindly take your seats in the auditorium.